There's always something to do when you've got an allotment, but whilst the seedlings we'd sown last month were starting to get established and there wasn't much need for weeding, we decided to hop on a plane and have a lovely holiday in the sun. Hey, what's up?
We're thirsty.
What?
Thirsty.
Thirsty?
Yes, thirsty. Where the hell are you?
We've only gone away for a week.
A week? Do you think we can last a week without water?
Fine, we'll come back then.
Good. And bring me a souvenir.
And with that, it was time to come home and get back to business as usual. The first job on our list was to plant out the lettuce that we'd sown about a month ago, as it now had a good root system and foliage. We started by removing any weeds, and then adding a fresh layer of compost to the top. We removed each seedling from its module, spread them out using a 20cm guide before planting them. We initially thought we would just do one half of this bed, but as we had so many well-established seedlings, we thought, why not get them all in? We're definitely going to have a glut of these in a month or two. Once the lettuce was in, it was time to plant out some corn, but this wasn't without its challenges. We found a row of slabs right underneath where we wanted to plant the corn. This isn't a surprise at this point. I guess we'll save them. Slabs always come in handy.
Right.
After the slabs had been removed, I carried on by getting rid of all the grass and weeds. Unfortunately, I hadn't had the tarpaulin on this patch very long, so it was a bit of a slog, but I persevered and eventually got it ready for planting. I'm using a 45cm guide here to space the corn, to give them enough room to grow. Then it's time to put the tarpaulin back to keep the weeds from coming through. We'll eventually have corn covering this whole patch, but now it's time to give these young corn a water to see them on their way. After that, it was time to plant some scabious at the back of the plot. I bought these at 3 for £5 off Facebook Marketplace, which I didn't think was too bad. I potted them on, and this is them after a few weeks in the greenhouse.
Pretty good root system on it.
I dug a hole and added some water, hoping to encourage the roots to go down into the soil, but found out instead that this part of the plot doesn't drain so well. So after letting it soak for 5 minutes, I got the first one planted, then it was time to plant the other two. On the other side of the flower bed area, I planted out some cosmos. This variety is called Cupcake's Blush, which we've grown from seed. It should bloom with soft, purple coloured flowers. And that was all we got done on this day. Here's how the seedlings were looking on the 11th of May, but there was one group of plants that were looking a little worse for wear.
Here's what slugs have done to the beans.
It turns out slugs like nothing more than crushing hopes and dreams and eating young beans. That's what you get for going on holiday, I guess. We've never really had the need to deal with slugs when gardening at home, but there's so many places for them to hide here that now doing a slug check is part of our daily routine. But we want this plot to be as easy as possible to look after, so I made an investment into some slug traps. After a hard night eating all your produce, slugs like to go and have a few pints at the boozer. So to lure them into the traps, I bought some of Italy's finest lager, and after a taste test, it was time to get them filled. Once the traps were in place, we sowed some more beans, Monge 2 and tender green beans. But beer traps weren't the only precaution we were taking to stop these pests.
So these are starting to come up now, and the last beans that we sowed were eaten by slugs. So I'm going to put some copper tape around it to see if that stops them from eating it. But we've got stuff like traps as well that I've put down, so we'll see what happens. See if it works. So the slug trap that I set a few days ago with beer in has now got a couple of slugs in there, so it's working, but the rest of them don't have one. But nothing seems to be getting eaten, so that's a bonus. Time to water now.
We were excited to try growing onions from sets and from seed this year. We planted our sets out last month, and the onions we sowed from seed are now ready for planting out. So I cleared the bed of all weeds and started laying a path of cardboard and grass beside it to help when it comes to weeding. Then I marked out some holes with a guide and dibber, then got set to start planting, but there was an unwelcome surprise.
Oh, for God's sake. Woohoo. Oh, my pretty holes.
What is it?
It's a root.
Once all unwelcome roots had been cleared, I could start planting. I'm trying to plant the onions out in groups of about 3 or 4, as supposedly they like to be planted in groups. So check back in a few months to see how they get on. We're really keen to sow as many flowers as we can ourselves, as it will save us a lot of money rather than buying them from garden centres. Here we're potting on some dahlias, echinacea and cephaliflora.
What sideways? That might get No, this isn't verbena. This definitely is lettuce. Yeah, 'cause that's just by accident. I think. Yeah, you just see the difference.
Oh, they're two lettuces.
Next up, we planted some hanging baskets with plants that we bought from the garden centre. These will add an early pop of colour whilst the rest of our flowering plants are getting established. In these baskets, we're planting petunias and geraniums.
That looks good.
How are you gonna get the that up to the top?
Bring it round, I guess.
You need to do that before you put stuff
Why do you think that? I've done hanging baskets before.
With everything that we've been doing already this month, we may have forgotten that we still had our main crop potatoes to plant. So on the 16th of May, we took up the tarpaulin that's been down in this part of the plot since last year, cleared any remaining weeds like mare's tails, and planted out the rest of our seed potatoes. On the left, we've sown a variety called Vivaldi, which will be good for making chips or mashed potato, and on the right, Maris Piper, which are a great all-rounder, but we're hoping they'll make some amazing baked potatoes. Then it was time for a spot of weeding. Once we were on top of the weeds, it was time to get the grass cut, and I think now is a good point to have a trip down memory lane. Time to check up on the lettuce we planted out at the start of the month. They're coming on well. Some better than others, but not bad overall. But those slugs have been lurking around. So, I put a couple of slug traps in. And to deter them even further, we've planted some leftover onions, and now I'm going in with some marigolds, which we've grown ourselves. And would you just look at that root system? After they'd gone in around the lettuce, I put some in between the carrots to deter carrot root fly. With all this growth, we're going to need something to feed these plants, and rather than spend lots of money on fertilizer, I've been eyeing up some nettles around other plots, which after collecting and soaking in water, I'll have nettle soup, which is a great organic fertilizer, but boy does it smell. Someone that's not deterred by the smell of nettle soup is the plot's resident mouse disposal officer, who I'm trying to make friends with, but failing. If you've never smelt nettle soup yourself, it's hard to describe what it actually smells like, so come back to me, I'll have a think on how to describe it. I've already had this batch of nettle soup brewing for a while, so it was ready to use, and after diluting it with water, I put some on the strawberries, onions and lettuce to help them on their way. Sometimes it's great to just let part of the plot grow and not worry too much about it, but after a couple of weeks it was time we paid some attention to the soon-to-be flower beds at the back of the plot and plant some Verbena bonariensis, but not before Grace shares her thoughts on root systems.
A throat that goes, or like gulps or anything like that. Look, it's just amazing.
We're putting the Verbena around the back of the border as it grows tall, around 6 foot, so it should peak above the plants we have growing in the front and create another level to the planting scheme here. The last job of the month was to cover the strawberries with netting, as they're starting to produce fruits and we don't want anybody stealing any. Now it's the end of the month. You can see how the warmer weather and more sun, along with a little bit of encouragement in the shape of nettle soup, has brought everything on. We've been saying that after this month, we feel for the first time that we're actually going to get produce from this plot. It's actually possible. It's an amazing feeling. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.